last frontier that required civilization. And that's where that came from. And one of the things I argue in the book, as I set that up, I point out that the history of sheriffs themselves, as well as the mythology they perpetuate, really lends itself quite understandably to what some sheriffs are calling the constitutional sheriff movement.
To understand this role of the constitutional sheriff, we first have to understand the role of the sheriff, and it means a lot of different things depending on where you live. But for the constitutional sheriff movement, is there something in the Constitution that they're pointing to that they believe gives them what they'd say is supreme power beyond the state and federal government?
So to be absolutely clear, the U.S. Constitution does not mention sheriffs at all. So the term constitutional sheriff, they mean rather that sheriffs are the chief interpreters of the Constitution. Now, most people might say, well, it's the Supreme Court who interprets the Constitution, right? Constitutional sheriffs say that it's actually the sheriff in their county who decides how the U.S. Constitution is enforced. And by that, they really mean what they call the original Constitution, which consists of the first 10 amendments. So I want to be clear that when they're talking about their version of the Constitution, they're really referring to what we would call the Bill of Rights, and they're not referring to things like post-Civil War amendments, so the 14th Amendment or the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. So all of these amendments, particularly the ones after the Civil War, that current courts really rely upon. Now, constitutional sheriffs would argue that there is no one who can tell them what to do. Not the president, not the Supreme Court, not the governor, not the legislature. Sometimes constitutional sheriffs will call themselves something like a king. Another constitutional sheriff compared himself to a knight. His badge was like a shield, and he was the knight protecting his kingdom from the federal government.
One example of a self-proclaimed constitutional sheriff is Joe Arpaio, right? The former sheriff of Maricopa County, Arizona. And listeners may remember him because former President Trump pardoned him in 2017 after he had been convicted of criminal contempt related to his tactics with undocumented immigrants. What were some of the maybe atypical ways that he used his power?
Joe Arpaio, I think right now, is best known for his over-policing and violence against immigrants or people that he thought were immigrants. So one of the things he did was conduct unscheduled raids on, let's say, particular businesses. So he would try to catch people, janitors or something coming out of public buildings in order to see if they were undocumented. He and his deputies pulled drivers over, and if they were Latino, they would often take them into custody and run a background check to see if they might be undocumented. And this was something he did regularly in public and rather openly. At the time, it was pretty well known that this was Joe Arpaio's method and that he harbored a lot of anti-immigrant animus. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind that he had help. So not only did he have help from the state, which passed a law, what they called the Show Me Your Papers law, but the one thing about Joe Arpaio that interested me a lot when I thought about constitutional sheriffs was, why did people let him go so far and so public? He went so far as to hold press conferences with people behind him dressed in black and white stripes, kind of in a chain gang formation. He showed off the pink underwear he said he forced people to wear.
Prisoners. Yeah.
Yes, his prisoners in his jail, which was largely a big tent, which he called Tent City, had no air conditioning. He refused to give people things like salt and pepper, which I suppose he argued that people in detention didn't deserve salt and pepper. He would also play right-wing radio through the loudspeaker during particular times of day because he thought that
within the jail.
Right, within the jail, so that people would be forced to listen to right-wing radio. And he did all this, right? A tactic of both humiliation, but also, I think, a great show of his power, right? The power of appearing with, people in a chain gang behind you not only dehumanizes them, but also shows on a way that no one could stop him. And it seemed like there was no one at least willing to stop him. One of the things I do want to add about Joe Arpaio that's important is that he also proved himself extremely poor at typical law enforcement functions. So he, for example, failed to solve sexual assaults. He ignored most of those. He ignored domestic violence claims. He also failed to solve a lot of murders and other crimes that most people would consider pretty serious. So, alongside this theatrical display of power and humiliation, he also, I think, most people's point of view, didn't do the job that he was really elected to do.
You mentioned how you were fascinated by how he was able to do this all out publicly. What did you find out about that, and why? Is it that those that he worked with, as well as the community that he served, agreed with him in these tactics?
In part, he really became something like a media celebrity. So people around.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Your Sensei Owl Bob. That's me. Here I am, being your Sensei Owl Bob. And what they're talking about is this sheriffing movement, and what it represents is the dynamic of the characteristic of the nihilist. I'm like withdrawing, basically, hey, I want to sell this place, at least for a month, right? Like I said, I would give you a space. It's all good. What are white people saying back then about all this?
The Haitian Revolution has been described by scholars as an unthinkable moment.
Unthinkable moment.
Because the Haitian Revolution
Hey, Jane.
is not just another slave revolt. There had been slave uprisings happening across the Americas, right? And they're saying, okay, you're saying you believe in liberty, you're saying you believe in equality and brotherhood. Well, it turns out we believe in those things for ourselves too. What they
talk about getting employer.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Lana Summer.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. Coming up, is climate change making mosquito-borne diseases?
And I know they want to shelter dogs, but there's so many to choose from, and they bring a lot of unknowns.
She does like to look around these lazy YouTube.
Talk about getting employer buy-in. You could not get Sue off her schedule. She was like, I am sorry, I can't be talking to you. I got work. Another aspect, you're right, among the displaced population. That little pellet is heat generating because
smooth over price fluctuation. And also, places have to be more collaborative. You have to be more thoughtful about how you work, thoughtful about your processes, and
e-cigarettes and power banks overheated most often, popular items that are
aimed at this point. So, selection by NASA.
That's something that I think belongs to anyone. It belongs to this community, and it belongs to the people that show up.
On the night out there, Grants is out.
My story, the pictures, most people were expecting just a good with cats unknown, good with dogs unknown, good with children unknown. Okay, too many unknowns.
Yeah, too many unknowns.
And they know they want to shelter dogs, but there's so many to
thing. So there is this requirement for these turtles to have all these different
talks about getting employers ban on children using social media. Will they be?
And what we are finding is, first of all, more than 90% of companies that trial a 4-day work week, the conversation you took
data. Because if you don't know, if you're not clear on what narcissism is, you'll notice that like they get really angry, or they get sullen, or they get silent, or they get passive aggressive, or they get in digs, or they bring up stuff from the past, or they actually might leave. And for people who have abandonment wounds, that idea that the narcissistic person will say, well, if you expect me to do all this, maybe this isn't the relationship for me. And some people, so terrified of abandonment, will keep putting up and putting up. But the appeasing doesn't happen overnight. It's an indoctrination process. It's like an acclimatization. You wake up one day and you've adjusted fully to this silencing reality. And then once people are in that deep, they actually don't know how to find their way out. Well, you were saying in your book about it's not just domination, these are domination patterns. So you just said, it's like, and they leave, they threaten to leave, or they will seek revenge for what you've done. And it's like, so it's more than that. It's more isolating you. So that's the difficult part, because all those things aren't happening. Just some of those things. Right. One of those things are happening. And those things are interspersed with good things. The thing is that the narcissistic relationship isn't always terrifying. It isn't always upsetting. There's actually good days. There's things that attracted you to this person, especially if it's in what I call an adult onset relationship. A friend, especially a partner, that's where we see it most, sort of most comprehensively. And that the person will say, okay, well, I remember we both love, we have some similar interests, or I like having sex with them, or I find them attractive, or they're very smart. Very smart's a big one with narcissists. They're so smart. Like smartness isn't a virtue. To me, it's like a parlor trick, or it's a skill, but it's not a virtue to be smart, right? I mean, it's funny how we've made that happen, and I think that tactic of thinking smart is good has really benefited narcissistic people a lot. And so those days, those good days, whether it is the day they get their promotion, they're like, let's go on a 3-day getaway and spontaneously plan it because they're so pumped about their promotion. And you're like, what was I thinking? I'm being ridiculous. This is actually a good relationship. Then you come back and it all starts again. But those good moments create the stuff we use to justify the relationship. Because most of us don't love to change up the status quo, especially if it's been a long-term relationship that we've become not going to say.
Long-term relationship. Yeah, that's what we've had with Donald Trump. And we're about to, if Cammie wins, that's another narcissist right there. Pretty much every politician is a narcissist, right? Pretty much our culture, United States, we're the exceptional, right? Where there's no other country like us. So, what did you say? Since Christopher Columbus, white people in the United States have killed over 1.6 billion people in North America. I mean, Canada, United States, Mexico. And then if you add in the other things, the Civil War, and then the Spanish-American War, and First World War, and the Mexican War, and the Indian War, you start to mount up a lot of folk. Then you look at the wars that we've enabled, like the best one is the Gaza Israeli thing going on now, and the Russia Ukrainian thing going on now. These are all things that we've enabled, all those dead people are on our nickel, especially in the strip. And yet we can't talk about it, or do anything about it, or because we live in a narcissistic country, right? All our leaders are narcissists, and they gaslight you, and they play you, and they make you feel like you're the enemy, you're the person, you're the problem. It's all your fault, So, what do you guys think about that? There's 3 of you there. What do you think of narcissism? What's your experience of narcissism? What kind of narcissistic experience have you had? Yes. Uh, Let me get my glasses out so I can read. I think these are my glasses. Yep, let's see. Yep, reading glasses. Yep. Let's see what you say. War against woke. Yes. And woke is, I mean, any kind of trope like that. It's, you read, 1984, and there's this thing called newspeak. And woke is like newspeak. Anything like that, it's like the opposite. Like No Child Left Behind meant every child left behind. Beyond toxic, So our whole civilization's toxic. So how do we detox our civilization here in America, right? Because our touch, our expanse, our influence on the planet is mind-boggling, and people don't realize that there are powers that are manipulating all of this that we don't vote for. We don't even, they own us. Your birth certificate, they own you. Go. What's his name? Gordon Maxwell or something Maxwell. He's all about, you know, um, law and taking it all the way back to Babylon. And Joseph P. Farrell is pretty good at that, and so is Catherine Austin Fitz. A good show to watch is, um, you know, Dark Journalist. Right now, you watch all these things. Jimmy Dore is another good one. They all have their own ideological bent, you know, and it's like because of this narcissistic toxicity here, you have to vote for one or the other. Well, I am, guided by George Carlin's rules, right? We don't belong. If you go read Gary Allen's None Dare Call It Conspiracy, he's basically saying left, right, they're just two wings of the same plutocratic fascist bird. And he should know. He worked under Dr. Quigley at the CFR. And when I hung out there with my mentor, Billy Kluver, who basically brought modern art to America. And in the CFR building, he had this thing called Automation House. You can go Google that. Billy Kluver, Automation House. He, again, he was going to Oxford and to the Sorbonne in the 20s, and he saw, that whole movement of change. And he was somewhat involved through his great cousin, Madame Kluver, who owned this amazing curiosity shop on Lexington in the 36th Street, I think. And it was like a time vortex. You went in there, and it was just the whole back wall was a mirror. And if you were energetically able, you could walk through that mirror into any time you wanted, right? And that was his cousin, right? So his family was woo, so they were connected through the Theosophical Society and the Thule Society and the ISIS Foundation, which was run by George. What was George? George Christie was not the guy who ran it. What was George's name? Anyway, if you go look up ISIS Foundation, also the founder, this guy was the guy who basically put into satellites up into space. He started the nonprofit entity called Intelsat, right? And he did it for the betterment of mankind. But no, all these people were working for the entity that no one sees, the hidden hand. No one talks about this. No one on the media, no one on social media, on real media. David Icke does. Well, David Icke does talk about the reptiles. I guess David gets the closest there, and David does a great job, and you have to give it to David. He's been doing it for now at least 20, 30 years, right? I've only been doing this show for, 6, 7 years. And I just keep doing it because that's what I've been told to do. I was told, listen, you've done a good job trying to change things for the better. I was involved in a lot of things. My eyes were opened when I worked at the VA at Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. Right, I saw what. I mean, I already knew what war was about when I was 6, and my father took me to see an above ground nuclear test in Nevada. I kind of got this, okay, things aren't what they seem to be. And then when I tried to tell people a Nazi nun murdered me in the first grade, right? Which kind of, broke my jaw, broke my orbit of this eye, broke the little horseshoe in my ear. But all this is good because I hear things of frequencies that most people don't hear. I see things through this eye that most people don't see. And you put these two eyeballs together, I get a really interesting perspective, right? I can see people's energies, when they're lying, when they're cheating, when they're scared, when they're all of the above, which gives me, and I can see it far away, like blocks. I can see it coming, right? And so I'm prepared to deal with whatever it is, right? Um, but I can't really change anything. So what I've been told is that I just need to tell the story. So that's why I am your griot here to tell you a story, right? And so one of the better stories I can tell you is oh, I died in 2014. Um, I recouped in Florida on the largesse of my clientele, the desperate lawyers. And one of these guys wanted me to do something, so he put me up in his nice house in the Keys and got me everybody I needed. He got me a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, a colonic specialist, an endocrinologist, you name. I gave him a whole list. He brought them there, and those guys in 2.5 months kind of switched my homeostasis. So I wasn't out of balance, was still way overweight. I already was changed my diet. I swore off fancy restaurants and that, right? And I did a few more jobs and realized I couldn't do that kind of life anymore, working for the desperate lawyers. And so I went back to Virginia and I had pretty much sold half of everything I had by 2006 and then bought to school and then bought a few other things and had a nice rent roll where I really didn't have to work that hard. And I got involved in, I had used, I'd come to Virginia from Asheville, North Carolina, which was a one-off, meaning Asheville is like the Paris of the South, right? And when I was there, it had been bankrupt, so it had nobody there. You could do whatever the heck you wanted, and the majority of the people were interesting artists like me. So it was loads of fun for about 9 years, and then in '06, I mean '96, when they finished paying off their depression debt, and I had studied a lot of things about Asheville, right? And so I understood the bourgeois motif, right? More than, I mean, I grew up in the bourgeois motif. I went to prep schools for the richest people in the world. And those folks, the bourgeois are people who feel, who basically it's the culture of being narcissistic, right? And I mean, you know, good old Elon Musk and Microsoft Billy Boy Penis and Faceless, what's his name, and all the rest of those guys um, basically are narcissists. And what is the main foundation point of a narcissist is someone who is scared, has no confidence in themselves. So they have to gaslight everyone, right? They have to push everyone out the door, right? So anyway, there I was in Roanoke, and I was like I went down into the hood and got involved with the politics of the city, and because Roanoke is very interesting in that it represents the demographic microcosm of the United States. It has everybody. I mean, it actually had two Sikh temples, right? So it had everything. Had 600 Christian churches in it, and everybody was sucking on the tit. Everybody was in it for the money. I mean, half those churches were in somebody's backyard. They got a 501c3, got a church thingamajig. They didn't have to pay tax on their house. They had like folding chairs in the garage, and they'd move the car and the lawnmower out and get ready for Sunday and take pictures of it or put themselves on the internet and blah blah blah. And virtually every church is that way. The three churches that I go to now are that way. They're all in it for the money, right? Now the people who are there, that's a different story. They're actually there for community. They are actually there as righteous people of that religion, right? But the church itself is as corrupt as you can get, right? Every one of those suckheads who are the ministers and the deacons and the hierarchy, just like when Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple, right? And when I keep talking about love and sharing and blah 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 blah, and let's organize because we need to be a community, and and I use biblical motifs out of the book, right? And I talk about how, you know, the King James is really only one book of the Hebrew tale, right? It's just the Torah. And if you see what, the Hebrew word of the Torah translated into Greek, because at the time of Jesus, nobody read Hebrew. All the Jews read Greek because Greek was the language of business and the community and et al. Right? And so if you take the Hebrew of the Torah and bring it into Greek and then bring it into what does that word mean? You suck. So Christianity took the Torah, and the whole book is about how you suck, right? How you're not any good, how you're worse, how you can't do anything to get over. It's all God, and He can throw you in a lake of fire, and you're gonna go there anyway. So you suck, right? Because you're just fat or smegma, right? Go Google those things up. So that's how we became a country of narcissists, because our founding fathers were narcissists, right? I mean, just really go look at them. Go look at Washington and Adams and Jefferson and all those guys. They were freaking narcissists. They had no, qualms of having, you know, slaves, right? And doing whatever, selling. You'd have a family, and you keep the mom because she's got nice tits, but you sell the kids and the husband, and without a qualm, without a think of their feelings, without any of the above, right? Because they're fat, you know, they suck, and those Christian guys, hey, they can't even do anything wrong. So that's why you look at Donald Trump, and he is that, he is just, and the media cleans everything he does up. They sweep it under the rug because they make a ton of money from advertising, right? So that is the bottom line of why Donald is where he is. I mean, all Donald was a grade Z game show host, right? He failed at everything he did. He was, you suck. He was fat, you know. Then you got stuff like this, right? I mean, they go on and on about Donnie.
All right, guys. So we got some new numbers to discuss here about the presidential race. Now, look, to this point, we've been seeing poll after poll that shows Kamala Harris up, and the lead was growing. And for a second there, it started to look like, hey, this might become a landslide. It might become a landslide because she had just kept climbing since she became, the Democratic standard bearer. Well, now,
But when you go from zero, it looks a lot like you're going up, but now it's neck and neck.
she sort of leveled out a little bit, depending on which poll you believe. Maybe came back down to earth. It's very possible that the honeymoon is over, in the sense that when she first came out, she was the new shiny toy for a while, and you had the DNC, which went well, and so they had just kept going up and up and up and up and up. Well, a poll just came out, and I think the reason why this is kind of a big deal, I think it's like an A-rated or A-plus rated pollster, like a massive, massive sample size is part of it. I believe it was a New York Times poll, and that poll has her one down nationally. Now, remember, if modern history is any indication, a Democrat needs to win by like 3 points or more in order to win the election. So that would mean effectively she's about 4 down in this new poll. Okay, so here we have Harry Enton on CNN. He's going to break down where he thinks the state of the race is, and then I have a lot to say about it. Here we go.
And just point out how close this race has been, consistently close. All right, campaigns where any candidate led by at least 5 points in the polls.
So then you got
The
this
movie
guy.
that Donald Trump doesn't want you to see is now set for release in the United States on October 11th. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, aka the Florida Lawman, here on the Midas Touch Network. A few months ago, we discussed the movie The Apprentice, which is a biopic about Donald Trump that stars, among others, Jeremy Strong. Yeah, you know who that is. That's
The new A series laptop, nice aluminum finish. They didn't overdo it with the brand.
Was completely disfigured, but the hardest task was successfully solved. The ground team and co-creators did not let the new Chernobyl happen and kill the entire Middle East. The next Light Warriors op target was the Negative Archon Agenda's invasion portal that
When they are delivered at scale, it's going to have an impact on the world at a scale that no one understands yet.
Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, just did an interview at Stanford where he talked about a lot of controversial stuff. Initially, the interview was uploaded on Stanford's YouTube channel, but a couple days later, the interview was taken down from YouTube and everywhere else. But today, I was somehow able to access the interview video after spending multiple...
We'll come back to that. We'll see what you guys are saying here. I'll take some of this out of here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Hit that like button if you like it. And let's see, Fire Drake says, know that I come from reality itself makes me look at the world and take nothing man-made seriously. Yep. And when I claims or answer, the show must go on. Yep. Because the audience keeps watching. Exactly. So that's kind of why we have the politics that we have, because it's just a cartoon show. I keep saying that this all is a scripted show, and people, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I never cared for Elon until he left and turned against him. I worshipped him. He did interviews with small Christian channels. Yes. So Elon, again, he is just, all these guys are just poster boys. Meaning, I saw Elon about 10 years ago get interviewed when, SpaceX was kind of, it came out of the box and it actually started to work. And the woman who was running SpaceX, you have to realize, came from Lockheed. And in the 90s, the landing Dragon reusable, Lockheed did that, invented that, took care of that, right? It perfected it. She worked on that crew, and she's an amazing scientist, engineer, organizer, etc. Which Musk isn't any of the above. Just look at his web, his YouTube channel, right? Or not YouTube, his his platform, right? X, Twitter. And so that's a good example of his ability to run and organize things. Because everything else he doesn't do. So he's gotten interviewed, and he was at the X plant, and he had no idea what the frack anything was, right? And he was telling stories about him being in Russia and how he talked to Putin and how he was going to get all the Russian boosters, but then that deal fell through, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy, kind of out of the blue, said, um, so your Tesla automobile, right? That is your cash cow at this time. And the guy goes, yeah. Oh no, that's what we're doing. And so the guy goes, so why is it named after Tesla? And Elon says something like, well, that's what the lawyers told me to call it. Well, that's not true. Tesla was in existence way before Elon even got involved. And he basically, these two guys who were real Tesla aficionados, why it's called the Tesla is because there are synchronous AC motors on each wheel. And so a induction motor, which is what that is, basically takes no juice to start it up. A DC motor takes a big, nearly drains the battery every time you step on a gas tank, but not the AC induction motor, right? Because it's inducted to go. And when you hit the brakes, that motor turns into a generator because instead of burning that energy to stop the car and its heat, like with brake pads, it puts it into the coil, which basically puts a load back into the battery. And that's really what makes Tesla cars what they are. And there's hardly anything in them, meaning there's no motor, there's no incandescent, no gas tank, no gear shifts, none of that, none of this stuff. Half the stuff that goes into an internal combustion car isn't there, right? And so it's lighter, it's all the above, right? And so the engineers who put that together were brilliant, and so they were right at a point where they needed some more cash to go to the next step, and that's when Elon stepped in with his big. He got a couple $100 million for selling his part of PayPal, which again he had nothing. He didn't write a line of code. He didn't do squat except take the money. He basically put the phone book on the internet for California, and I don't know. He says he and his brother stayed up all night and did that, and then started running it, and it was quite successful. And so he sold it for like $50 million, and then he put that $50 million into PayPal, and then he sold his chunk of PayPal for like $300 million, and then he put that into Tesla, and then Tesla and these boys, took that money and turned back Tesla into its perfect timing of an electric car, right? And because there were no other electric cars on the market, really. I mean, there were hybrids, but that was about it. And hybrid really is probably the best of all the world. Honda had a great back in the 90s, right? Just before the oil embargo, they had this little teeny, almost like a roller skate car. Two people sat in it, and it was a hybrid. Had a little, like lawnmower engine, motorcycle motor, and it had a battery. And that motor just charged the battery. It really had put no mechanical anything into the into running the car. The wheels ran on electricity. Period. There was no gear shift, no nothing. Again, very light car. Its exhaust was virtually zip, and they, and the guys in Detroit told the Congress and Senate, don't let this car in. And so California, because it was right there, could bring it in for air control reasons. And then it kind of sifted through the country, but it wasn't really so big. The federal government just kind of leaned against it. And but that was like, if that had really caught, and everyone in cities drove around in that, because a sucker, you could go as far as you wanted to. 'Cause you could put gasoline in the sucker, right? Not to charge it up. But that one tank of gasoline could get you like 500 miles. You know, it had like almost a 200-mile um, you know, thing per gallon. It was like mine. So you go home, you plug it in the wall, it charges, and you could just plug it into a plug. You didn't need no special anything. Just plug it into a plug. It charge it up overnight to be 100%. Take the extension cord out of the car and drive away. And every time, you know, it needed a little oomph, the internal combustion engine, the lawnmower motor would start up and you'd ride away. And it was a two-seater. It was like a very sporty little car. And you know, basically all the stuff was in the trunk, and your where you put your groceries was in the front of your car. And they had these airbags that were really cool that not only blew up against you, but they had other ones there that kind of blew up against whatever car hit your car. So you were really, it was quite a, it was one of the first cars that like had airbags all around you. So you get a bad accident, boom, you were totally embedded by the airbags, and there was a big airbag in front of your car that stopped whatever hit you. So it was quite, and so I was in the 90s, right? That was when Bill Clinton was still president. And it sold, like in California, really, really well, but not so much the rest of the dealerships. They wouldn't let dealerships, they wouldn't let the Honda car dealerships, which are starting to really take off, sell those. And so, again, everything is frigging manipulated, you know? Our borderline, what are they borderline chain? ISH, what's ISH? And narcissists aren't borderline anything. They are 100% toxic. Your first mentioned narcs are toxic. It's exactly what they are. There's no way. And you have to get away from them from the first moment you see them. But they play you because they love bomb you. Oh, we think this guy is so great, so smart, so this, so that. That little spidey sense goes, oh, I don't know about that. So you can do one or two things. You can be really aware of what they are, and you stay. I mean, if you want to, like I was involved with a number of male narcissists because they were really interesting, because they had, like Donald Trump. I mean, I had nothing. I mean, we were like a Venn diagram. I wired and built so many fine restaurants and nightclubs. I would, you know, see him at afar and just watch him, you know, what he was doing, and realize this guy's, you know, just please. And then all you had to do is read page 9 of the New York Post, and he was always there doing something stupid. And no one in the news media, once he came down that escalator, went and really did their homework on who and what this guy was. It was, I'm really smart, I'm really brilliant, I'm, you know, the art of the deal, which he didn't even write that book, you know. I mean, if you just scratch the surface of this boy, but he was being put there. That's why if you read, you can go online and read what he says at these, well, I have, Tammy doesn't do any news conferences. I do a ton of them. Well, he's unintelligible. And, the news just gives Donald Trump talked about, illegal aliens. And, they don't go any farther than that, where he goes, we're going to go and round them all up. We're going to get all 20 million of them. And, and we're going to put them in camps and we're going to use them as labor. He just goes on and on and on. And no one says boo about what he says. And you just have to look at, social media, because there are a bunch of dudes and dudettes that try to show it. But guys like Jimmy Dore and, Donald Trump is the best thing since sliced bread. And he goes after, Sleepy Joe. And, dark journalists calls Sleepy Joe, Stepford Biden. And now this is all true. These guys are wired. These guys are, but so is all of them. Go watch George Carlin. He really pegs it far better than I do. And hey, how are you doing? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. We're talking about, tonight is the big, um, mano y mano against Cammy and Donnie, right? And it'll be interesting because, when Donnie went up against Sleepy Joe, that was done on purpose. You don't understand. Cammy was put in as vice president to hold this role that she is doing right now. And depending on the needs of the hidden hand, that's who's going to win the presidency because both are going to do the same frigging thing. Both we're going to have a dystopian. We're already in a dystopian society. We're already in Hail Hydra. Now get away. Don't fly in the car. Go. Bird was like looking at me on my side view mirror, like, can I come in and just sit on your shoulder and crap on your head? No, can't do that. No crapping on Big Al's head. Enjoy the Tesla now. Misappropriation of ideas, aka patents, happen. Yeah. I mean, like the best example is Farnsworthy. He invented television soup to nuts, right? And General Sarnoff of NBC basically first, Farnsworthy was a farmer out there in the Midwest someplace, and he got the idea for an electron gun by, being behind his mule and plowing and seeing all those lines. And he basically invented TV in his barn, right? And he had this art, this knack for creating vacuum tubes, right? And so Farnsworthy, sent a letter off to NBC, RCA, basically, Radio Communication America, and that General Sarnoff owned. And so he basically said, "Hey, I got this idea for TV. I read in the newspaper. That's General Sarnoff's dream. Well, I've invented it." So they came, they saw, and they said, "Oh, well, you got to be full of it. You are like a farmer. You're not an engineer. You didn't go to engineering school. You don't know anything." And so he said, "Well, why don't you just take, here's some of my engineering notes and bring it back to your lab and have your lab boys play with it." Right. And they did. And they said, "Wow, this is kind of cool." So they then came and stole everything out of his barn and set his barn on fire. Right. And what did he do? He said, well, he had photographic memory. He didn't need any of that stuff. And by having his barn burned down, he he didn't have more. He had more than one barn, so he built the next version of television that was soup to nuts, and now you could transmit it through the air because he had talked to Tesla a bit. And so they took him, because they couldn't make anything work. So they came back to him about a year later and said, "Hey, how would you like to come work for us? Come to New Jersey." He put him in a nice big house. His wife loved it. The kids went to a nice school, blah, blah, blah. He works for RCA. And basically, they perfect television, in a economic manner, right? And so, I mean, he actually had color TV in the 30s. So basically, what happens is they're starting to build out their system. It's way before the depression is kind of happening, but they're building out their system. And Sharnup brings Farnsworthy up to his office, and there's this big French door, right? And they open up the doors, and they're like 32nd floor, and it's like open air. Open the things, and you step over that little precipice of the French door. You wee, right? And so basically, they pick up the big bully boys, pick up his kids and his wife, and dangle them out the window and say, and Sarnoff says, "Hey, why don't you sign everything over to me? I'll give you some money for it. You're good, And so he, because other people have flown out that window and nothing seemed to happen to General Sarnoff. And so Farnsworthy signs over all the patents to Sarnoff, and they get the house in New Jersey, and he goes and he gets another job with IT&T. So he's not anything to do with RCA, but Sarnoff owns a lot of IT&T, and IT&T, it's a little different, right? And so he's there fooling around with that, and then World War II comes on the horizon, and this guy, Dr. Knuckles, is working at Lawrence Livermore, but it was called the Rad Lab, and those two guys meet each other, and from that point on, they are hanging with Nikola Tesla in the Manhattan Project. They didn't call it the Manhattan; they called it the Manhattan District, because they weren't just working on the atomic bomb; they were working on a lot of other stuff, like Tesla's, basically time travel. First he invents radar in the 1890s. Tesla does, right? And he turns all of eastern Long Island into one gigantic phased array. I don't know if you can still, but in the 90s, you could go out there and still find the cables that were out there near Montauk, right? And that's why Brookhaven National Laboratory is up there, because of Nikola Tesla and the Manhattan Project. That's where they did all their stuff. But the organizational structure was in the Empire State Building, because that building itself was that and the Chrysler Building were both within them Tesla amplifiers, right? There's a lot of esoteric information on that. Enjoyed the Tesla how misappropriation of advertising, aka. Yep. So Tesla invented wireless transmission of electricity. That's the only way electric cars, and he had an electric car. He said, "This is what we're going to do: airplanes and boats and submarines and trucks will be running on my wireless thing. So no gasoline, no plugging anything into the wall, because the first automobile, the first car that wasn't drawn by an animal, was an electric car, and then a steam car, and then the internal combustion engine. Rockefeller, it took him almost 30 years to get his chemists to be able to crack oil to the point where the octane was right, because it was either too high and the motor blew up, or too low and it didn't have compression. It took them like 30 years, right? Give or take. And so, but they had an electric, Tesla had an electric car before then, right? And he also had AI. He had these little robot, boats that he would put in the boat pond in Central Park, and they would ride around. He didn't have any like remote control. The thing were powered by his wireless transmission of electricity, and it had an AI in it, right? To figure out, turn left, go right. Something's in front of me, I'll stop or go back. And he had that in the 1890s, right? And when they did, what made AC over DC was Edison couldn't transmit DC further than 6 miles, where AC, Westinghouse and Tesla had their first generation hydroelectric up there near Niagara Falls, and they wired, they transmitted, those big towers, they're called transmission towers, not wire towers, transmission towers, because those wires aren't carrying the voltage, the current. They are wave guides. The current is all around that wire, right? And that's, the next step was, we don't need the wires, right? So all of this, we should be, and so there is technology of all this stuff, right? The same thing with the anti-grav. Anti-grav is not a big deal. All you have to do is have a field, you look at Newton and Einstein, they talk about there's the E equals mc squared, that's energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. But you have the forces, right? And so you have the electromagnetic, you have the gravitational, you have the strong force and the weak force. And those are all the forces that are inside the atom, right? Now, they just say gravitational force. They don't really give any definitions of it. The electromagnetic field, there's a lot because it's all about electrical engineering. EMF is very well understood. But gravity, the strong force, the weak force, not so much. And the weak force, which no one can even, the other two, gravity you can feel, you walk around, you don't fall up in the sky. And, the other force, let's see what time it is. Ooh, let's listen to.
Of Latvian and Romanian airspace by Russian drones, calling them irresponsible and potentially dangerous. Latvian officials said they recovered wreckage of an Iranian-designed Shahed drone that crashed 60 miles from Latvia's border with Belarus on Saturday. Meanwhile, Sweden's government says it's preparing to transfer Saab fighter jets to Ukraine as part of an increase in Swedish arms shipments. Texas is suing the Biden administration over federal privacy rules that bar investigators from viewing medical records of patients who travel out of state to have an abortion. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says the rule creates a, quote, backdoor attempt at weakening Texas's laws, unquote, which ban nearly all abortions. In Missouri, an amendment that could undo the state's near total abortion ban is at risk of being removed from the ballot after a Missouri judge ruled Friday the campaign to get the ballot measure did not sufficiently explain the amendment in the signature gathering phase. Missourians for Constitutional Freedom, the group behind the ballot measure, is arguing its case today before the state Supreme Court, which will need to make an immediate decision since today is also the deadline for any ballot changes before they're printed for mail-in voters. Meanwhile, the Nebraska Supreme Court heard arguments Monday in lawsuits against two separate abortion ballot measures. Nebraska currently has a 12-week abortion ban. And in more related news, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' election police unit has been investigating voters who signed ballot petitions for Amendment 4, Florida's abortion rights measure, which would toss out the state's 6-week abortion ban.
This is what's
Since
coming.
it was formed in 2022, DeSantis' so-called election police have been deployed to intimidate voters, in particular, likely Democratic voters. The Justice Department has charged two leaders of a white supremacist group alleging they plotted to assassinate at least one U.S. senator and a district court judge. Dallas Humber of Elk Grove, California, and Matthew Allison of Boise, Idaho, each face 15 counts of soliciting hate crimes and providing material support to terrorism. Kristen Clark is head of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division.
The defendant's goal, the indictment charges, was to ignite a race war, accelerate the collapse of what they viewed as an irreparably corrupt government, and bring about a white ethno-state.
Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance is escalating his racist anti-immigrant rhetoric, this time targeting the Haitian community in his home state of Ohio. On Monday, Vance wrote on the social media site X, quote, reports now show that people have had their pets abducted and eaten by people who shouldn't be in this country. Where is our border czar? He asked. The Trump campaign piled on to the bizarre right-wing misinformation campaign, writing, quote, President Trump will deport migrants who eat pets, unquote. The first and currently only scheduled debate between Trump and Kamala Harris is happening tonight on ABC News. You can watch the debate at democracynow.org and tune in tomorrow on Democracy Now! For a recap and analysis of the debate. In Georgia, students at most Barrow County schools are returning to classrooms today, nearly a week after a 14-year-old with an assault rifle shot and killed two other
Second Amendment
and two teachers, injuring 9 others.
Second Amendment.
Classes at Appalachia High School, where the shooting took place, remain canceled. The Washington Post reports the mother of the suspected shooter contacted the school on the morning of the shooting and
Yeah, the
warned
school dropped
a
the ball on that
counselor
one.
about an extreme emergency involving her son about a half hour before the first shots were fired. The warning reportedly came after her son texted her the message, quote, "I'm sorry, Mom." Separate text messages also revealed the family was in contact with school officials about the boy's mental health a week before the massacre. Authorities in California and Nevada have issued mandatory evacuation orders for tens of thousands of people as an intense heat wave grips large swaths of the Southwest. Fast-moving wildfires are burning south of Reno in Nevada and in California, San Bernardino County, Orange County, and at the foothills of LA's National Forest, as well as in Northern California's Lake County. UCLA climate scientist Daniel Swain said extreme fire behavior has also been observed in Oregon, Idaho, and Wyoming. In tech news, Google and Apple are facing billions of dollars in fines after losing their respective appeals against the European Union. The European Court of Justice ruled Apple must pay 13 billion euros in back taxes to Ireland in a legal case that spanned 10 years as it went through the appeals process. Separately, Google must pay a 2.4 billion euro fine for favoring its own price comparison shopping service over its rivals. This comes as Google's second major antitrust suit brought by President Biden's Justice Department kicked off Monday. At issue is Google's monopoly over the digital advertising industry. Last month, a federal judge ruled Google operated an illegal monopoly in the online search industry. In Florida, the Miami-Dade Police Department has released footage showing how officers stopped and handcuffed Miami Dolphins star Tyreek Hill as
Well, that's Democracy Now, and you can go online and see that show and all the others. They do a very good job. I just wanted to play that for you a little bit because this is their news roundup, and then they kind of go deep into different stories. And again, they do a great job, but they have their own bias, right? And as long as you can taste the bias in people's outlooks, you should listen to what they have to say, because within whatever prejudice or bias they may have, there are relevant threads that we need to listen to, right? And back in the day, back in 2015, when Donnie had come down the escalator and said he was running for president, I was the outreach organizer for the First Christian Church in Roanoke, Virginia. And that was a beautiful church. It was about almost 200 years old. Big, nice, beautiful church right downtown, across the street from the city hall, right next to Oki's funeral home. Right, the other side was the Red Cross, and the sheriff was right across the street. And just a couple of doors down was the NBC. And so there was all this amazing stuff going on, and there was no restaurant there, right? And so this church had a community hall for the church, right? Had a big, beautiful kitchen. It could feed a good 500 people a day. It had a walk-in fridge, it had a 9-burner Garland stove with a Bain Marie, and it had everything. 100 years worth of plates and cups and silverware and knives and you name it. And I met these two old ladies from Jamaica, right? And they just wanted to have a restaurant and cook food for the people, but they didn't have any money to rent a building or all the permits and the contractors and all of that kind of stuff. And I said, I got it. And I brought them to the church. I brought them downstairs. I said, this is your restaurant. And they went in, and it could seat about 80 people at a shot. They had about 10, 12 tables, big round tables that you could sit about 10 people at, right? So I said, you cook the food, I'll get the people here. You're going to get most of the money. And you don't have to have any permits. It's a church, 501c3. We're not going to charge anything. it's going to be donations, right? So we called it the No Fear Cafe, right? And the homeless shelter was right on the main drag of that road, and all the homeless people would shuffle because the the shelter would throw the people out after 8 a.m. If it's like 20 degrees below zero and a snowstorm, they still have to get out. They can't stay there, right? So they had to. So the only place they could go, they would walk the 10 blocks up to where the YMCA was, and they could go there, right? The library wouldn't let them sit in the library. There was, these people, and there were about 400 folk who were at the mission, and the mission made 50 grand a year from the state and nonprofits and things that gave money to house these people, right? And it was, when I worked for those guys, and I listened to people's issues. Right behind it was like the neighborhood that was like totally trashed, right? And they kind of owned it all, right? The city had given them, everything just to, and I would just go there and take, I said, so anybody here know anything about carpentry or building or, no. Anybody want to learn about it? Okay. So we go there and we would clean it out. And I was still working for electricians in Roanoke. And I knew the inspectors, and I knew the police. So the police were backing up me doing this. And so they were, telling the powers that be, this is a good idea, because they had to deal with these guys, and they'd end up in jail and then into the mental place and the more these people would act up, the more the mission would get money. And so the first house we did, I put 12 guys in there, a big house. Each guy got their own room. It was their room. They could keep it, right? Didn't have to pay rent. Didn't even really have to, because the police kind of helped us out. So the police kind of paid the utilities. The police were the people who said, yeah, we're going to pay the bill. So the utility company let them put the electricity and the water and the gas. And we did that. And in the process of doing that, those guys got a certain level of skill sets. I had been working for this electrical contractor, so I knew other contractors. And I said, don't you need guys to just like clean up and, you could show them so they could like maybe put sheetrock up and you could pay them $8 an hour. And they, yeah. And then we actually made a 501c3 through the Salvation Army. Captain Monica was amazing. And so we would get grants through the Salvation Army to give to the contractors to pay these guys because they were training them to have a job, right? And they were kind of saying, if they get to this level, we'll actually hire them. And so we were doing that. And that's when I got fired from the mission, because they said, no, what are you doing? You've just done 3 of these houses and you've taken them away from them because we let that other chucklehead fix them up and then sell them to bourgeois people who are moving in and don't know that's like the death neighborhood. And we're making like a $80, $60, $90,000 a house. And, plus we're getting another 20 from the grants to fix them up through Habitat. And you're just doing it and letting these guys, you're taking the bread out of our mouth. You've gotten 12 guys out of the mission and they got a job and they're no longer drinking and doing alcohol. What are you, nuts? And I got fired. And this is at the time when John was, please, champion, please. And then I go up there and he'd throw me out, right? And so I kept being brought up there and with perfect timing when I got fired from that place, because I had an office in that place, because I got that job because the electrician, we redid the mission, right? We rewired it, and it was a contractor to thing was done in the 20s. We redid everything. And so I was there for a good long time. And that's when the mission people said, well, you're a shrink, aren't you? I said, yeah, well, I'm a shrinky boy. I wouldn't quite call myself a shrink. I'm a little social worker, a little, statistic guy. I get the picture, Well, maybe you can help us write more grants. I said, sure. And that's how I got to know the inside out of the mission in Roanoke Virginia. Just like I worked for a place called TAP, Total Action Plan, by a guy who worked for, he started an old guy who looked like Santa. I used to say, that's Santa. I'm his younger brother, Bob. I take care of the naughty and nice list. And he was, basic CIA spook, right? And so he retired. He basically worked for the State Department, but he was a CIA spook. And he basically, when he retired in the 70s, started TAP, and he made millions, right? So I worked for TAP as their, grant / demographer. And again, I started doing righteous things for the people who needed help. And I got fired from him, right? Because it wasn't putting money into his pocket. It was getting, it was taking money out of his pocket because I was getting people out of his programs and out into a house and out into a life, and they could move forward, right? But so Total Action Plan, again, that's newspeak. Total Action Plan means nothing happens, right? Just like HAT, Homeless Action Team. No, they just kept people on the street and made them just spend the whole day writing paperwork. So I spent, about 20 years in that neck of the woods from 98 to I left that neck of the woods in 2017, but I was never there all the time, but it was my demographic place, meaning I saw all these amazing things going on. Let's see. Narcissism as borderline insane. Yes, I would say so. They use social issues to act like society is progressing to replace real, tangible progression. Exactly, because that kind of progression is natural. You leave it alone, let it grow, just like I belong to these three churches, right? The people are righteous. They want to do the right thing. They want to help. They want to be good Christians, blah, blah, blah. And all of the administrations of those three churches are corrupt, and they don't even, the real sad thing is they don't even know they're corrupt. That's the real interesting thing. Enjoy the Tesla. Okay. James says, hi, Al. Okay. Then he says, ammonia is a gas, but dissipates his scholastic prowess. Still doesn't get it really like the guy, though. It's all open to interpretation. Who can say why divinity does what it does? Exactly. I was talking to a friend about that just last night, and he's a shrinky guy. He works in, some nonprofit entity that's almost state run that, gets people up the street who are, junkies and alcoholics and all of that. And he tries to navigate them into the right program. And before then, he was an artist and he worked in video and he did pretty good, but it enabled him to drink a lot and, get, self abuse, right? And so he got himself out of that, and that's why he got into all of this, social assistance stuff. And yet he can feel good about what he does, but he doesn't because he's not making any forward movement in his own life or in his, in the program. And so he's starting to like that. And I don't talk to him a lot, but when I feel him needing to talk to me, I kind of, call him, hey, what's happening, buddy? And we talk for an hour or two, and then he's back on the path, right? Now, he's always on the path. He's just kind of sliding. But so we were talking about, the essence of God and what's that all about. And I was just saying, God is unconditional love. Jesus is unconditional forgiveness. That's it. You just kind of do your best in service to that. You have to be a doula. You have to be a slave to this unconditional love. I mean, when you all first started watching me, what did I always keep saying? it's all about love's co-creation. That's God, right? And we are God's mirror. God is the work in progress, right? And the more that we are fed or smegma or you suck, that's the Torah speaking about it. That's when God gets kind of stalled, right? Because he can't quite do it all on his own. Annie Jones, what redhead, I guess, bless. And he's editing of his, to lure the patrons in unnecessary. Yep, pretty much. And that's every religious motif, is that? It's a bait and switch kind of scam. And let's see how we're doing. We got a good 40 minutes, maybe half hour left. Can't on my hands over the mic. Sorry. You got to keep telling me these things. Let me. The sun was baking my laptop, putting it here. The sun has gone further that way, so this should be better. But I don't have to lose connection. No. Back now. Yeah. Now it's more my hand goes. I'm holding the laptop and the hand gets in front of the microphone. That's what happens. So anyway, what needs to be done is that the we in me, right? The me is you, and the we is all of us, and we have to basically step away from this toxic culture that we have. And we have to be our best. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be perfect. I go to church and, I basically always look like a homeless guy, right? And whenever I go to the Baptist church, I wear, where is it? Where is it? Here it is. I wear this hat in, right? And I have all of these buttons. These are all from the 70s, 80s, 90s, early O's, all the different political and social things I was involved in, right? And so I walk in with this hat, and everyone looks at that and smiles and shakes that. But the minister goes, "Take off your hat." It's in. And I said, Pastor, I call him Rabbi all the time, and he doesn't understand. I said, Rabbi, Christ was Jewish, and in the temple we wear a hat. Is this not the temple? And he goes, get out! I've been thrown out quite a few times. And then other people who have been woken up a little bit, they've been awakened, not woke, to, Al, come on back to church. So I do. And right now, I go back to church and I don't say a word. I go in there and go into state. And it annoys him. Him and the deacons get annoyed. But I don't say a word. I can't speak in church, so I just go into state. And and I go, what are you doing back there? I hear this noise. Are you humming? No, I'm not humming. It's just the vibration of love's co-creation. And they don't know what that is. Where the other people, they kind of get it. They don't know what it is, but they're receiving it and feeling good about it. So that's why I still go to church. But if I don't want to go to church, it's no big deal. I don't, it's not. Because I'm already in church. This is my church, living out here. And I pray all the time. I read the Bible all the time. Wherever I go, I have the Bible. I read it because it's a great book. You shouldn't run your life by it. What you need, what the Bible is a frequency generator. You know, when you read it, it brings a certain, you know, to you, and that's what you should be. And then you let that harmonic vibrate inside of you, right? You know, quoting the Bible is a useless edifice. 9/11 anniversary tomorrow, something big, and yes, Project Bluebeam. Yep. Well, Project Bluebeam's been around forever. That's for sure. All these projects have been around forever, and I might say forever. I'm talking about Babylon and Mesopotamia, you know, because the number one ad, you know, the thing that gets in the way of love's co-creation is Ball. You know who Ball is? You know, I love that TV show, um, Stargate, right? Because they were really, really good on what the Air Force was doing, and also, you know, Egyptian and Mesopotamia and Babylon and, you know, history. I said Danny Jones, so Al would get an introduction and then sees the deceit, but falls to realize, yes, and they all do. It's sad. They a lot of these guys and gals really have. You know, the one I really appreciate and cherish is Eisenhower. What's her name? Eisenhower, the granddaughter of Ike. She's really, you know. Yeah. James Cashbolt mentioned blue beam gun that made people crazy. Well, that's just true. You can, you know, be, but you kind of have to let yourself. It's like increment by increment. If you let yourself go crazy, yeah, you can go crazy. Um, all the above, meaning, you know, I've been attacked, you know, murdered many times, but it was like, oh, let me learn about that. Now, there's certain things. There are a lot of people who kind of get themselves involved in, you know, people who are what you call it, you know, uh, narcissists, right? Like I was saying, in the 70s, there were a ton of narcissists. Like there was this guy named Carlton Haynes, who was one of the first Marlboro men, right? He was a Ford model, you know, and he came from a real wealthy family, you know, a Gilded Age family, you know, so they were kind of Dutch. They owned tons of real estate everywhere, and they were, you know, basically part of the what you call it, robber barons. You know, they just stole everything, and so so you know, I used to go, you know, to parties, rich people, and I was an artist. I was, you know, an interesting. I knew a lot of other people, and so they would like invite me to parties. Maybe I'd bring those other interesting people along with me. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. Mostly, I went there with my grandma's suitcase that was the largest Tupperware container in the world, and I would just scoop whatever goodies they had on their table into that suitcase and leave. Anyway, that's where I met Carlton, and he had like, you know, three gorgeous booty girls on either arm, right? When he walked in, right? And a really nice suit. And everyone like, well, oh, Carlton, Carlton. But when he turned around, that guy's a scumbag, blah, 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 blah. You know, just had nothing right to say about the guy. Went and talked to him a little bit. And he was like, and he goes, where do you live? And I said, well, wherever. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, you know, I live in Soho and Tribeca and Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and basically whatever, I have a couple of different spaces, and he goes, well, that's interesting. And so I was at the time at the Una Bear Gallery, Phil and Jane. I was their buddy, and we were fixing it up to be a gallery. It was a beautiful site, right on oh West Broadway and the road that goes from the Williamsburg Bridge to Holland Tunnel. Starts with a B. Anyway, and it's a street. It's not like It's not like Canal Street, which goes from the Manhattan Bridge to the Holland Tunnel. Anyway, so he comes, he looks at that. He says, I've got a building. I've got a couple buildings here. I need somebody like you. So I went over and said, oh yeah. So I started fixing this and fixing it. And he goes, take whatever floor you like and make yourself a. So I did, right. And so Carlton always had a building for me to work on, just like Howard. Howard was another scumbag. Again, just like Carlton, his family were really rich, had a lot of real estate, old wealth. Howard never really. Howard, on the other hand, wasn't just a good-looking guy being a model. He actually got into building stuff, right? So all these old buildings that his family had down, on Duane Street and down in Tribeca and down further, kind of where Radio Row was and Thomas Street. And so I always had, and also on Spring Street over near 6th Avenue, near Father Fagan Square. So I had all these different things, and I could do whatever the crap I wanted in any of them. That's where a lot of these places would have an ancient old bar or restaurant from back in the day that no one had used for the last 40 years. And I would just clean it up and start my dumpster diver diner and bar. And licensing, we don't need no stinking license, because nobody went down to Tribeca. Nobody went down into Soho. This is before it became trendy and expensive. Now there's 60-story condos in Soho and Tribeca. It's like, why I'm not in New York anymore. I used to come and go all the time, and it was like one of those things where I'd go away for a year or two, come back, like everyone would start talking to me like I just saw them yesterday, and work would just fall into my lap, and I would just, and Carlton always had another place. Howard always had another place for me to work on and live in for a while. Or I'd find a building like the Ear Inn with Richie, and we'd start the Ear Inn. And, I did a lot of stuff like that were because out of the Ear Inn became a real, right next to it was the UPS building that was owned by the Port Authority. And they had this corner part of that building that was like supposed to be a union hall / community center / whatever. And we took it over and turned it into white columns. Go Google white columns. And Richie was great because he was also from that bourgeois class, but he was, a great, interesting artist / a eagle is constantly flying over the car. Its shadow is like going over, which is always a good sign, right? And so, he's, let's see. Knowing that I come from reality, itself makes me look at the world and take nothing man-made seriously when I claims the answer. Yeah, it's so obvious, but people are so asleep. That's why they're woke. They're not awoken or awake in their life. I never cared for Elon until he left. I turned against him. I worship him. Yeah, that's what people, they don't, what's in the 10 Commandments, don't worship anything but love's co-creation, basically. narcissists are borderline. Yes, I see. They use social issues to act like society is progressing. Right. Enjoy the test of how misappropriation. Exactly. Hi, Jane. Adiel. Let's see, Jamie. Amon Hillman is a gas, but dissipate his scholastic powers. Still doesn't get it. Really like the guy, though. It all open interpretation. Who can say why divinity does what it does? Yes, except love. Love's co-creation is divinity. Danny Jones, what a breadhead. Family to feed, I guess. Danny's editing of Ammon is to lure in patrons. Yep. Okay. Can't hear you. Okay, I got my finger off the mic. Loose connection. Back now. 911 is tomorrow. I said Danny Jones. So it depends on how the thing goes. So if Cammy can get Donnie lose his mind, like when Hillary and Donnie had things, and Donnie snuck up behind Hillary, and she went, oh, that should have right away. Everyone should say, oh, this guy's nuts, but it was scripted. I mean, she knew he was back there. I mean, Hillary ran because if Bernie should have won. They get to California, and he's got all of the votes to be the president for the Democrats. They go to California, and bingo, they go, sorry, Bernie, you lost. We had these special electorates. But I had all I needed was 3 more votes, and I would win. I must have gotten 3 votes in California. No, sorry. But if you don't fight this, you're going to become a real powerful senator, and we're going to put you on all these important committees, and here's this envelope. What do you think of that? Or you can fight it, and you're an old guy. You just might keel over from something. You got a choice here, Bernie. We all make choices. That's what my brothers and sisters say to me, because they look at my life and they can't believe it. Because, there was a period where I had a lot of money. I was doing a lot of stuff, and then all of a sudden, after I died, I gave everything away and live out in the woods, right? And my brothers and my sister, one of my sisters, all they do is send me an emoji. They don't want to have a conversation. My oldest sister, she wants, because she kind of realizes she has certain illnesses that kind of creep up on her, and then, oh, I'm gonna die, and then she'll call me. Can you do that thing you do from far away and heal me? And so I do, but it's more her belief that I can do it that makes it happen. So it's really God's love that does it, not me. Like me, every morning I wake up dead. I really, really do. It's quite amusing. And then I, use that energetics to, okay, I'm still alive, get out of bed. But, like right now, every, my arms, my hands, my legs, they've all fallen asleep, which is, you're heading towards death when everything falls asleep. College mentioned a blue beam gun, right? Well, there are all kinds of guns that can really affect you. Not interesting. Yep. These certainly something about Ammon. Primary source. Give me a little rundown on Ammon, because I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. What happened to my? I'm gonna put you back up here. I had these guys in the sun too long. Do. What would you call Ammon? What's his full name? So I read Greek. Yes, I used to read it really well back in the day, and haven't really read it in 20, 30 years. But yeah, I can, parse it out, right? And the best thing about reading Greek is if you're reading another language that like English or Latin, you read that, you know it, and then you read the Greek and you can say, oh, it's like any language. I can read almost any language if I can read what it said in English. And then in theological books, old ones, they have these things. Oh, what do they call it? It's kind of a book. Like when you read the Bible, you should always have, and I have a couple of them. They're really good. You read this, verse, and then it'll tell you what it's all the other books it's connected to, what Luke said, what Matthew said, all of this kind of stuff. And it'll put it all down there. So you don't have to like go through all the pages of the Bible looking for it. It's right there. So when you're reading any theologic book, whatever language it is, you pretty much need a book like that. It's like when you go to the baseball game and all the statistics are there, right? You really can't tell the game unless you know who's, what they're doing, right? So you can see. Kind of, yes. But I have to prepare myself to see because I am kind of blind. Those who know generally don't say. Exactly. That's me. I don't really talk about this stuff. Those who know don't need to question. I'm sharing for Al. Right. So, but, when you are a griot or a sensei, you are a teacher, you're telling a story. So you're giving the generalities of the picture in a way that makes a harmonic that the listener kind of goes, oh, yeah, I get that. Absolutely. And don't cast, go, swine. Yeah, generally. Yep. Knowledge, conviction, direct experience will suffice. Right. So that's why it's no big deal to me about, I'm pretty amazed that my channel is here, right? And that it's accessible by anybody. A lot of people, oh, I can't get your channel. But I go ask other people and they go, no, there it is. So I'm just doing this because I've been told to tell the story. You can't make anybody believe. You can't make anybody change their mind. You can tell the story. So that's what my basic reason for doing this, right? And I got nothing else to do, right? Because one of these mornings I'm going to wake up, oh, I'm dead. And I'll go, oh, I really am dead. Oh, and then I'll kind of float out of my body, which I've done many, many times, and look down from the man cave and go, yep, look, I'm starting to turn green. Oh, look, bugs are crawling out of my nose. Okay, I guess I must be dead. And then, I'll go through that vortex, that was pretty well defined in 2001 when Dave went, look, oh my God, it's all stars. And I'll go do that and pop out someplace else. And I'll either get a nice little vacation or, I'll be put on to another project, which is fine by me. Right? Like right now, I think I kind of have to. Let's make sure the car starts. Oh, yes, it starts. Let it run a little bit. Oh, baby. Oh. Yeah, I got to move these legs. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to move them. You know, my sister was telling me, oh, I have to go to my physical therapist and my acupuncturist and my, and I said, that's very nice. And I do all those things for myself. Like, I used to be a healer, so I did a good, when I was at the VA, I got trained to be a physical therapist. When I was with my sensei up in Putney, Vermont, I learned acupuncture. And then he sent me to a Chinese doctor in Chinatown, New York, Dr. Lu. Now he's heard the name, will probably take as much notice as he did to Revelation. Later, man. Okay, James. I give up on censorship of my YouTube simply and said guinea pigs. Well, so like I said, I don't really get, I guess, I don't get censored because the people who should be on my cadre here are, right? It's not censorship. I don't get like thousands of views, which is probably good. I'd be trolled by, when we first started, I had at least 100 people watch every show, and I'd have 4 or 5 trolls, and people, oh, let me run your channel. I'll make you a millionaire, blah, 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 and I said, no, we got to get rid of these trolls. And I'd say, no. And so I would say, hey, what's happening? I mean, that's, Buddy. Buddy's a good example. He was a real troll. And I just was nice to him all the time. And then he turned to the better side of Buddy, right? That's when he became Buddy. He had some other kind of name. And the other trolls that show up every now and then, I'm just always nice to them, so they never come back, Oh, boy. Ooh. So, the best thing you can do if you have really bad legs is, so I got everything my mom had. I have neuropathy, I have all that kind of crazy shit. And all you got to do is sit and have your legs kind of hang down like I have right here. And I just lift my leg up like this. And do this. And do this. And do this. And you curl your toes in your shoe. And you do that. And it stretches and exercises all the phalanges in your feet and all the muscles and tendons in your knees and ankles and hips, right? Pretty simple, right? No big deal. And you're kept safe because you're sitting in a chair like I am. And my right leg is my bad worst. I kind of broke both my legs when I was a kid, or I should say, they were broken. Fish Rake 09. If you can't discern your real reality, that's on your jamming. Yep, that's true. And the only true reality, there is no reality. But the only thing that is, because see, everything's in the moment. There is no past, no future, just the moment. So you have to be consciously intent in the moment of love's co-creation. Then everything's the way it should be, right? That's why I'm still alive. That's why I can still walk. They want to cut my legs off. They want to, cut my colon out, and have me crap through a colostomy bag. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Took me a year to kind of get myself to a place where I could get better. And I mean, I was rolling around in a wheelchair for about 6 months, and then I had a walker, and I had clamps on my legs, and now I don't. Right? 6 years later, now I don't. Well, 2000, yeah, 10 years later, 2014 is when I died. So I'll be here as long as God needs me to be here, right? And God is what's a new word for God? I mean, I call it love's co-creation, and that usually upsets people, but um, the bottom line is that's what it is. So I'm here as long as love needs me here. The words betray your subconscious and thus reality. You. Okay. Well, I guess so. I'll have to think on that one at least. At least I know the truth now. Well, that's again, you can know that truth, dear Jane, in the moment, but not in the past and not in the future. Oh, and that's what being an old does and grows discernment. Yep. You certainly try to push buttons still. Of course. I'm a cheeky monkey. Can't you tell in my laugh? Meaning, well, I get all these threads sent to me on my the dude awake 42 at Gmail, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. And let's see, how much battery do I have? Am I on the red line yet? Oh no, I probably have a good 10 minutes. I mean, pain is our friend. It tells you, hey, work on this. So I'm working on it. See what I'm doing? Energetically taking care of all the meniscus and all the nice little puppy stuff in your kneecap, taking down the inflammation. Yep, psyche into matter. Yep. Oh, anyone coming up here? Nope. It's the piece of work. But don't take yourself too seriously. Never take myself seriously. I try to be funny. I do my best. Right? Because when you're a cheeky monkey and you push buttons, you have to be able to apologize before they get mad. While they're still thinking about it, you go, "Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to say that. I meant to say this." And then they kind of go, "Oh," because they're now thinking about that. And then and that's what gets them to a point where they either like walk away going, I don't know, or they go, and they ask a question because I keep saying, hey, what's the question? So tonight should be an interesting night because if Cammy can get Donnie lose his shit, that'll be one thing. See, Cammy will be worse than Donnie. Donnie's basically telling everyone what he's going to do. I'm going to punish this. I'm going to change that. I'm going to get rid of this and get rid of that and blah, blah, blah. And now all of that's been going on, since Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter started the ball rolling on all of this. And then, good old Ronnie Reagan, he put it out in front of everybody. Oh, trickle down economy, blah, 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 blah. We're going to decontrol this and decontrol that. And then George H. basically put into order the New World Order, the globalist agenda, which had always been there since, since the Bible, not the Bible, since the Vatican said that if you were white and Christian, you could go steal other people's property as long as they were black and indigenous. They weren't white and they weren't Christian. You could go, they weren't human, right? That's when, this all started, right? And it's still going, So, and that was the globalist agenda, right? Back then, right? Go take a look at that people, whatever it starts with a B, bird, bill, bull, people bull. That's what I call it. And America still uses it to give reason. I mean, why we went into South America, and it's that same, 13th century papal bull, right? I mean, rest of Europe, had given it up and said, "Oh, sorry about that." Not us. We still use it. The stuff that we do in the Mideast, we use that as an excuse, right? It's truly frigging nuts, right? But no one even notices it. They're so freaking unconscious, and looking at the presidential or politics as some kind of football game or video game or soap opera, but they don't know that they're looking at a soap opera. They think it's real. It's like, really? It's like truly amazing. Try being the operative word, but then is it you or the spirit world working through you? Oh, it's always the spirit world working through you, but with that conscious intent, that's where you throw your consciousness into the mix, where you can be aware of what's going on, right? See, the other thing I do when I sleep, I'm running all over the place, doing all kinds of stuff in my sleep, and when I wake up, that's when my joints hurt, and if I sit too long, it's like ouch, 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 ouch. Oh, I'm gonna stretch it out now. Yeah, that feels better. You're always asked to observe. You're always a task to observe, right? And that's what I'm doing this. That's what a griot does. Tells a story. The first rule of the griot, the story has to be somewhat amusing, somewhat interesting, somewhat, it has to have a hook, right? And even if you leave, you come and see that for like 20 seconds and you go away, you come back and watch it again. And then when I'm not, majority of my audience isn't like you guys, the cadre who jump in and add, and you really make a difference, cadre. Without you guys, I'd be a lot more boring, And so, but when you jump in here, it brings, when more than two come together in the name of love's co-creation and Jesus' unconditional forgiveness, bingo, there you are, right? And so, like when we watch Johnny Boy, so he called me up the other day. Can you talk on the thing? Can you tell a story about And so I said, sure, for $200. He says, I'll always pay you whatever money you want, and never do I see a nickel from that guy. And when I take care of him and take money out of my own pocket to feed him good food or take care of this or that, he says, you're costing me money, and he throws me out. It's like, because what happens is he sees what compassion is. He sees what a friend is. He sees what he could be, and he throws me out, right? So when we were doing go watch that show. That's his newest show. And he's, got me on the phone, and he's got me up there on his computer and who I am and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, really, it's like when he stole my birth certificate and my wedding certificate and the wedding certificate of my grandparents and pictures of my grandparents and this beautiful mahogany box that my grandfather made for me. He stole it. And then he put it on his show and said it was his stuff. And there's my face, right? There's my name. And there, and then when I said, John, why don't you give me that stuff back? And he goes, what are you talking about? I didn't take anything. I didn't steal anything. And then he goes into being Jimmy. And then he said, listen, I own this place. I can do whatever I want, So, and that's why Johnny Boy is the canary in the spiritual gold mine. Right? He is all of us, and he's got some good stuff in him. He's mostly got good stuff in him. All of the other stuff is neuroses, right? It's like a big scab, and nothing bad ever happened to him. So they laughed at him in fifth grade. Really? No. Right? So his parents were so caught up in their career they didn't spend too much time with him. Really? You know? Try getting murdered a few times, Try spending your whole friggin' youth in a hospital because people are killing you, right? One way or the other, right? And all I'm doing is going, well, this is interesting. And every time that would happen, without me freaking out or getting upset about it, but me being aware of like observing what's going on just to make sure these guys don't really kill me, something good would come out of the side. And I would go towards the good thing. When that nun, made me deaf, made me blind, made me not be able to talk for 2 years, I got sent to a Marinol sanctuary. And those people were unbelievably brilliant and beautiful. That's where I learned how to speak other languages, how to read other languages. I was blind, so they had me reading Hebrew. Wow. And when I could read Hebrew for the rabbi who was my landlord in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, he saw all these books in Latin and Greek and Hebrew, on my table. He goes, "What are you?" I said, "Well, I'm an itinerant scholar who is a theologian." He goes, "I need you." He goes, "What?" I said, "I want you to be a rabbi." I said, "Rabbi? I am Italian and Irish and German and, I'm Roman Catholic. I don't know." And he said, "Well, no one's perfect. And I'm the head rabbi." He goes, "I'm like," and he knew my godfather was Cardinal Cushing. He goes, "I'm like your godfather, Cardinal Cushing. I'm the third most powerful rabbi in all of Judaism." I said, "So why aren't you in Israel?" He goes, "I can make more money here in Brooklyn." Okay, let's see. Let's see what. Let's see. Where's let's see. So I'm gonna let's see how much battery do I have left. Oh, we're in the red zone, guys. I kind of have to split in about a minute or two. So I love you guys. I'll try and come back around the same time tomorrow. Amon Hillman. No. Oh yes, there we go. Look at that. Dr. C.C. Amon Hillman earned his MS in bacteriology and PhD in classics from the University of Wisconsin, Madison. That's a good school. Well, guys, I got to go because the thing is going to crash any second. And it really hates doing that. So I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.